Stand by.
America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And welcome to our show today. It is Monday, May 24th, 2021, start of a brand new week of utter insanity, corruption, and life goes on as usual here in the United States of America. We've got a lot to talk about today. A lot of stuff is going on here. And as usual, we're going to do news until we run out of news. Then we're going to open up our phone lines for your comments, questions, and observations. A quick reminder that Cynthia McKinney will be on our show tomorrow in the second hour talking about her new book about the COVID virus, the involvement of American interests in developing what appears to have been a potential biological weapon. And we're looking forward to that. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. So let's get right on into it. Over in Washington, D.C., 2,000 National Guard troops are finally getting ready to go home, 5 months after the January 6th Capitol protest, which the corporate media is still trying to call a riot, even as more and more information surfaces that the demonstrators were actually invited into the Capitol building to be set up for a media event to discredit them and the Trump supporters here. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is out there playing the sympathy card and says that she has been in sympathy after the Capitol protests that she believes was an all-out attempted coup against the government of the United States of America. Let's all feel sorry for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Meanwhile, this is a very alarming story. It came out of BizPac Review. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki seemed to admit late last week President Joe Biden is concerned that a number of U.S. Capitol Police officers died during the January 6th protests at the U.S. Capitol. And of course, that did not happen. There was one officer who died of a stroke the day afterwards, but no officers were killed on January 6th. So we have a president that is really, really out of touch with reality. And I don't know about you, but that's going to keep me awake at nights. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is back. He is announcing rallies in Florida, Georgia, Ohio, and North Carolina, and I'm sure they're going to be well attended, and there'll be the usual crowd of agent provocateurs trying to stir up troubles there. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog. Somebody actually did a poll about 2024 on the theory that Donald Trump is going to run again, that he is going to get the Republican nomination, and that he'll be running against Kamala Harris. And if it does come down to that, Trump is going to beat Kamala Harris and regain the presidency that way if he is not reinstalled in the wake of the emerging election fraud scandal. Over in Mayor Lori Lightfoot's Chicago, 35 people were shot, 7 of them fatally, Friday into Saturday night. And the Chicago Sun-Times reported exactly 36 shooting victims as of 10:30 p.m. Central Time Saturday night. 2 people were shot and killed Friday night following an argument which resulted in the man opening fire on a 23-year-old woman and an 18-year-old male who was with her, killing both of them. So Chicago's definitely on my list of places to visit now that I'm back here living on the mainland. Meanwhile, the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police has issued a vote of no confidence in Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Police Superintendent David Brown. And this should be rattling City Hall, although Mayor Lightfoot says this is actually a badge of honor, and she'd better go back to the dictionary and look up the words badge and honor, because I don't think it is. Story coming on out of legalinsurrection.com. Support for Black Lives Matter is falling rapidly. It is falling among white people, which is not surprising. It is falling among Hispanics, and surprisingly, support for Black Lives Matter is dropping among the black population. So are they going to start getting more violent to try and use fear to coerce support, or are they going to hopefully just sort of fade away into the woodwork and trouble us no more? Over in Los Angeles, there is a recall effort to recall Los Angeles District Attorney George Gascon. The recall is officially underway. So out in California, a lot of recalls going on. They're trying to get Newsom out of there, and now they're going after the Los Angeles DA. Over in Maricopa County, a lawyer representing Maricopa County itself has demanded that the 2020 auditors preserve all documents, dropping hints that there may be some kind of a lawsuit in the offing to declare the audit illegal or somehow get it stopped or blocked. The latest spin we're getting from the Democrats is that the auditors are the ones committing massive fraud and need to be stopped. Getting on to the COVID-19, yes, it's still out there. It's still a problem. And there's a video by Kate Wand, and we link to it from whatreallyhappened.com, where Canadian doctors are now being censored and told not to say anything about COVID other than what the government has sanctioned as being the authoritative source. Now, there's been a new development over in Wuhan. It has turned out pardon me, that 3 Wuhan lab researchers went to the hospital all the way back in November 2019 with what appeared to have been COVID. Dr. Fauci is now saying that he's no longer 100% sure that COVID developed naturally, and now he's demanding a full investigation into what those dastardly Chinese have been doing. This could be hoisting with his own petard because of indications that whatever China was doing with the COVID-19 vaccine was on behalf of and involved various U.S. government entities. So that could backflash on him rather nastily. Another story on the same line, this one from the Wall Street Journal, talking about how the growing awareness of the 3 researchers from the Wuhan Institute of Virology is fueling the debate on just where COVID-19 came from. Originally, it was claimed it was going to be the wet market, then it came from bats. And I've been saying all along, given the closeness of that BSL-4 facility, that somebody may have dropped a test tube, and that may have been exactly what happened. Story coming out of the Gateway Pundit describing Dr. Fauci as the rat in a trap, admitting that COVID may have been man-made, and going back even further, acknowledging that there was U.S. funding to these Chinese labs. So that's kind of interesting. And now Tucker Carlson, good for Tucker Carlson, I'm amazed he's still on the air, but he did a segment talking about vaccine injuries from the COVID vaccine and asking why thousands of people are dying from the vaccine. And so Tucker Carlson, pardon me, has broken the media silence that has sort of become the hallmark of any discussions of the adverse effects of some of these vaccines. And when you're talking about the younger population, the ones who just don't get COVID, the ones who don't die from it, and now they're being vaccinated and they're starting to die, which means in that age group, the vaccine is killing more people than the virus does. And that puts us back in 1976 territory and the swine flu debacle, where that vaccine was killing more people than the virus was itself. Story coming on out of global research up in Canada. They're talking about this German scientist, Professor Andreas Greinacher. He's a blood expert from the University of Greifswald, and they've apparently discovered that the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines contain these proteins that are linked to the deadly blood clots. And these 2 viral vector vaccines contain genetically modified cold viruses that on injection trigger an autoimmune response. And stray proteins, along with a preservative used specifically in the AstraZeneca jab known as ethylene diamine tetraacetate acid, or EDTA, are directly responsible for causing the blood clots. Now, Claire and I were very lucky. We did get the Johnson & Johnson because we couldn't see her mother without a vaccine. And at the time, there were no adverse reactions being reported. Now they are, of course, and both Claire and I have got vaccine regret, as it were. Senator Rand Paul is saying that he's not going to get the vaccine. And he says that he has not seen any evidence proving that the vaccine is any more effective than having actually survived COVID itself, so he does not see a reason to get the shot. And he says, until they show me evidence that people who have already had the infection are dying in large numbers or being hospitalized or getting very sick, he said he just made his own decision. He is not going to get the vaccine. Story coming out of Natural News, there's been an analysis of data coming on out indicating that Big Pharma knew the COVID vaccines would actually worsen and prolong the pandemic, which of course is a great business model for them. Keep everybody afraid, keep everybody sticking those needles in their arm. Money, 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 money. So, anyway. Over in Slovakia, there's a newly released report showing that the COVID tests are contaminated with nanotech hydrogels and lithium. And they're saying lithium is used in the lipid compound coating nanobots that are inserted into the hydrogels for ballistic delivery of biological agents. So they're out there on the forefront of claiming that this is actually some form of biological warfare. Something that really is of concern over in India, this was reported by BBC, they now have almost 9,000 cases of this rare black fungus, and it is an epidemic that is hitting thousands of people who were treated for COVID-19. It has a mortality rate of 50%. And they're saying amputation, including of eyes, is the only way to stop the infection. So that's a really ugly situation over there. Over in Sweden, the Public Health Agency is dropping the PCR tests because RNA from viruses can be detected for months after the infection. In other words, you can have the COVID infection, you can get over it, you can have natural immunity, but a PCR test is going to show you are still positive when you are, in fact, not. Okay. Last week, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued a statement that employers could be held liable for adverse reactions if they mandated the vaccines as a condition of employment. Well, this week, somebody got to them because they have now pulled that guidance and saying that, no, your employers are now just as indemnified as Big Pharma is. And again, it's all about the Benjamins. Over in Rutgers University, they were the first university to announce they would require the COVID vaccine for all students returning in the fall. Hundreds of universities have now followed suit. This has prompted a protest rally held at Rutgers as students and parents push back against the vaccine mandates. So, anyway, getting to the international news, there's been a bit of a political upset. Belarus has been accused of literally hijacking a Ryanair European jetliner and engaging in an act of state terrorism when it forced the Ryanair flight to perform an emergency landing at Minsk after a bomb threat. While the plane was on the ground, an opposition blogger critical of President Lukashenko was arrested and taken away. And so the Polish Prime Minister has said the plane had been hijacked. and accused Lukashenko of a reprehensible act of state terrorism. The reaction around the world has been pretty intense. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken is leading condemnation of Belarus President Lukashenko after forcing the plane to land and arresting the journalists. They're claiming KGB agents were on board and that a MiG-29 threatened to shoot the flight down. That has not been documented, and the claim of a bomb on board turned out to be a hoax. Now, here is where it gets interesting, where the United States is in high dudgeon over the arresting of this blogger. This is the same government that has Julian Assange rotting in jail in Belmarsh for having told Americans in the world about how our wars are being conducted. And let's not forget Edward Snowden, who is still living in exile in Russia. So it's a little bit of a double standard there. You know, when they can use it to bash Belarus, it's an outrage. At all other times, it's just business as usual. The European Union is threatening Belarus with reprisals after the Ryanair flight emergency landing in Minsk. And the incident has triggered a wave of criticism from European leaders who accused the Belarusian authorities of meddling with the European Union's civil aviation, and NATO said diverting the flight was serious and dangerous. Airlines in that part of the world are now rerouting their flights to keep them from flying over Belarus. Getting on down to Israel and Palestine, Joe Biden is out there trying to take credit for the ceasefire between Israel and Palestine, even though that was brokered by Egypt. That's why it came as such a surprise for Biden. He was opposed to it. He was cheering Israel on. All of a sudden, they've got the ceasefire brokered by Egypt, and Biden steps in and says, yes, we've done really, really good. But Egypt is still restricting support for Palestine despite brokering that Gaza truce. Egypt has been vocal in demanding calm in the occupied Palestinian territories since the beginning of Israel's crackdown on the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah and inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque in May. The United Nations is saying that Israeli aggression is greatly worsening the already dire situation in the besieged Gaza Strip. And in a statement yesterday, UN humanitarian coordinator of the occupied Palestinian territory, Lynn Hastings, issued a warning saying Palestinians endured unimaginable suffering during less than 2 weeks of Israel's brutal airstrikes against the densely populated enclave. And she went on to say the ceasefire must be solidified with all avoiding provocation. Now that gets us into Israel's behavior, because once again, yesterday, Israeli settlers stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque under the protection of Israeli security forces. They got onto the platform between Al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock and performed Jewish rituals there. And it feels to me like somebody in the Israeli government is trying to provoke a reaction from Hamas so they can say that Hamas violated the ceasefire, but so far Hamas isn't biting it. Meanwhile, right-wing violence is gripping Israel. There are reports of Palestinians being lynched. And in the aftermath of this recent upset, Israeli forces were found to have deliberately targeted 2 water pipelines in the Al-Safdawi area, cutting supplies to 20% of the residents of Gaza City. Now, cutting off food and water to a civilian population is, in fact, a war crime, and we need to keep that in mind. Physicians located in Gaza are recounting the airstrikes that happened against clinics and medical staff. Israel was picking their targets very carefully. Israel destroyed over 33 media offices during the Gaza bombing, including that of Associated Press. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. And in the aftermath of Israel's attacks on Gaza, there are protests all over the world. Now, as I mentioned before, despite the provocations at Al-Aqsa, the ceasefire with Gaza is holding. And meanwhile, there are demonstrations around the world. There were thousands of people in the streets of New York City holding signs saying abolish Israel. And protests are also planned in other U.S. cities as well. Now, Joe Biden is out there saying there has been no shift in his commitment to Israel. And he's out there defending Israel and what they did in their brutal 11-day bombing campaign in Gaza. And Biden also came out and said that a two-state solution is, in fact, the only answer to the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. And amazingly enough, I actually agree with him on that. I think it's time for the two-state solution to come into being. Of course, Israel doesn't want a two-state solution. They want it all. Biden has also agreed to rearm Israel to the teeth. He's going to replenish their Iron Dome missile supply. I think those go for like 100,000 a pop. And he's saying Israel has the right to defend itself as they're invading Palestine and bulldozing their homes and burning their crops and shooting their children. And there is, of course, this additional $735 million in arms, all of which ultimately, one way or the other, you will pay for it all. And Anthony Blinken is also out there saying that a two-state solution is the only way to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So maybe cooler heads are finally going to prevail, and somebody's going to say, look, you know, Israel has got to write a constitution. They've got to draw their borders. They've got to start behaving like a modern nation and not a bunch of Bronze Age tribal warlords. Netanyahu is out there trying to keep the fear factor up because it's going to be keeping him out of jail, apparently, saying that any attacks from Gaza will be met with a whole new level of force. And Netanyahu said if Hamas thinks we will tolerate a drizzle of rockets, it is mistaken. Well, it wasn't exactly a drizzle. It was a pretty steady attack. And despite the, or rather contradicting the propaganda coming on out about Iron Dome, about half of those Gaza missiles got through Israelis' defenses. Okay. Now, for a while there was actually a law that made it illegal for satellite mapping technologies to show high-quality images of Israel, the occupied Palestinian territories, and the Gaza Strip. Now, that law expired last year, all right? But Google says that it has no plans to unblur the maps of Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. Google thinks it's really none of your business what's going on the ground over there. Which gets me to this story coming out of Middle East Eye, talking about how social media was used and abused during the 11-day conflict between Gaza and Palestine. And we saw it all the pro-Israel propaganda, bovine excrement just oozing out of our screens, out of our smartphones and tablets. And it was pretty intense how the propaganda warfare was going on. The good news is, based on all the protests and public opinion polls, the propaganda really didn't work. And there's an article over at Electronic Intifada talking about polls of U.S. voters showing that Israel did not win the support of the U.S. voters during the Gaza massacre. And that's probably because Americans at bottom are fair people and understand the Palestinians are a captive, occupied population. And just like the French resistance fought back against the Nazis, the Hamas has a right to fight back against the occupying Israeli government. Over in Indonesia, they're having problems with armed rebels, and they're getting ready for a troop surge in Papua. to wipe out the armed rebels. It's a new security crackdown on armed separatists in the central highlands of Indonesia's restive Papua region, and it will be maintained until they are wiped out. So the whole world is in turmoil. Over in Myanmar, the junta wants to prolong their time in office. They have banned the Suu Kyi Party, and they want to ban that party. Responding to media reports, the party would be dissolved for alleged voter fraud. Now, remember, that is the reason the military staged the coup d'etat to begin with, accusations of massive election fraud in the last election. They are still promising to have new, honest elections within the next 2 years. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break, and we'll be back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about Myanmar. And there's another story coming out of there from U.S. News that more than 125,000 school teachers in Myanmar have been suspended by the military authorities for joining a civil disobedience movement to oppose the military coup last February. And so the suspensions have come just days before the start of a new school year. Some teachers and parents are boycotting as part of the campaign that has paralyzed the country since the coup cut short a decade of democratic reforms. Well, again, we get back to that issue. If that last election was indeed fraudulent, then, there's definitely an issue there. Over in Tunisia, somebody leaked a document in which the Tunisian president was urged to seize control of the country from the elected government to try and establish what is being described as a constitutional dictatorship. And this was contained in a document passed to Middle East Eye, dated May the 13th. The U.S., meanwhile, denies funding the Tunisian President Kais Saied's 2019 election campaign. And these were claims coming from an opposition group against the backdrop of the political crisis in the North African country. So once again, the U.S. is being outed for meddling in other people's elections, and then they turn around and scream, "How dare Russia meddle in our elections?" We're the only ones allowed to do that. Over in Turkey, their Interior Minister, Süleyman Soylu, has suspended security cooperation with the United States. They have suspended joint training and programs between Turkish and American police forces, denied early U.S. access to Turkish police intelligence on suspects, and refused to share information regarding ongoing Turkish investigations with American counterparts. So the diplomatic strains are showing over there. Another story, this one coming on out of CNN, no less, and basically it's attacking critics of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I was rather surprised to see CNN take this position. But they're basically saying that as soon as Biden announced U.S. forces would leave Afghanistan by September, there were all kinds of objections, and they're saying they're missing the important points. In the years prior to the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, all the way back in 2001, Afghanistan and Pakistan were home to 4 international terror groups. Now, as a result of the constant warfare, the Pentagon estimates the number of such terror groups has grown to more than 20. Now, second, when the U.S. first invaded Afghanistan, al-Qaeda counted about 400 members worldwide. It has since spawned branches and offshoots, including the Islamic State, in dozens of countries. Total membership is now in the tens of thousands, and they have at times controlled entire cities in multiple countries. So it seems like the United States solution actually created more problems. Over in Syria, they're getting ready for their elections Wednesday, actually, they're going to start. And already the United States and its allies are out there saying, oh, this is ridiculous. We're going to dismiss the election results. And the reason they're going to do that is because Assad is probably going to win re-election in a landslide. And the West does not have a puppet candidate in the race that they can promote. So they're just going to dismiss the whole thing. Anthony Blinken is now downplaying the chances of a nuclear deal with Iran, saying the U.S. has seen no sign Iran will comply with the assorted U.S. demands being made for sanctions relief. Now, Iran's position is really quite simple. Back when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed, the U.S. agreed to remove sanctions, and Iran made several guarantees about access and inspections of their nuclear facilities. And Iran complied with all of that. The United States kept the sanctions in place and added more on top of there. So Iran's position right now is, if you want to go back to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, let's go back to the original sanctions relief. The United States is now saying, well, we'll relieve the sanctions if you'll agree to these additional demands, and Iran is saying that would be completely impractical. So now part of that JCPOA deal involved access to nuclear sites by international inspectors, and Iran allowed those inspections to continue for a finite amount of time after the deal had ended. But as of yesterday, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf said that IAEA inspectors will no longer have access to surveillance images of the country's nuclear sites. Now, we can count on the corporate media to scream, well, Iran is building a bomb, Iran is building a bomb, Iran is building a bomb. But Iran's position is simple. If you're not going to keep your half of the bargain, then neither are we. Okay. Now, the good news is, story coming on out of Global Research saying that because of the shifting Middle East alliances, especially Saudi Arabia moving close to Iran, that war with Iran may actually be on hold. That they may be backing away from trying to launch that because it will create a bigger ruckus than the U.S. is prepared to deal with. Another story along the same lines, this from Sputnik News, talking about a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and saying that there could very well be a deal for closer ties between the two countries. And that would definitely change the dynamics in the Middle East. Senators have threatened to cut the Pentagon's funding if it cannot pass an audit next year. Now, we all know the gigantic sums of money, just unimaginable amounts of money that disappear into the Pentagon every year without any accountability. In fact, if you don't remember, all the way back in 2001 on September 10th, Donald Rumsfeld got up there and admitted that there was some $3 trillion that had gone into the Pentagon and nobody knew where it wound up. They just couldn't find it. And it should have been the military economic scandal of the year, but luckily for Donald Rumsfeld, the very next day was 9/11, and the missing Pentagon trillions vanished off the news. And that aircraft that plowed into the Pentagon just happened to hit the offices of the auditors who were trying to find where that money had got off to. So, anyway. Speaking of economic news here, story out of Investment Watch blog, Pick Your Fed Poison, Tanking Markets or Fatal Inflation. And they're talking about the link between the Federal Reserve propping up our stock market with tons and tons of instantly created money. And then as that money percolates out to the general public, it's driving up prices and creating inflationary pressures. Okay. Now, the Federal Reserve is starting to talk tough. They're talking to Treasury dealers in the Congress saying, we can't count on you, so we are going to take charge. And there are two narratives about the Fed's agenda. The official narrative is that the Fed's mandate is to keep inflation under control while promoting full employment. Obviously, they have failed on both of those. The unofficial mandate that's obvious to us all is they exist to prop up assets, especially the stock market, which has become the Fed's preferred signifier of prosperity and the righteousness of Federal Reserve policies. Okay. Story coming on out of the Daily Mail. Meat eaters are getting hit the hardest as inflation sees grocery bills soar, and we are definitely seeing it here. We were talking to some friends we had left behind on Oahu, and they said it's just gone right through the roof there. That we got out just in time. 2/3 of Americans are now saying that the price of beef and chicken has rocketed since the start of this year. Now, it's not as bad here in Indiana because we're right in the middle of farming country, and there's a lot of small-scale farming going on that kind of meets the local need. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is back at the White House, which he doesn't deserve to be, but that's another matter entirely. He is reportedly going to drop student loan forgiveness from next week's budget. And so this is another campaign promise he made that he is about to break, where he is not going to include the student loan forgiveness after pledging to cancel $10,000 from all student loans while he was on the campaign trail. Well, he's probably figuring since he had to steal the election anyway, he's off the hook for all the campaign promises he made. Meanwhile, and this is probably going to help in the short term, the Treasury is distributing $6.1 billion with a B to assist renters and landlords through the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. And it's almost kind of an inevitability that they did this because the eviction moratorium has to end at some point. The renters and mortgage payers still owe all that money. The holders of the mortgages and the landlords are themselves suffering tremendous financial harm because of the collapse of the cash flow. And so the Treasury is basically going to try and plug that hole. It's not a long-term solution. The long-term solution is to revitalize American manufacturing and bring back those high-paying manufacturing jobs. This whole idea of a service economy is a complete disaster. They sold that to us back in the 1980s, and it simply has not worked out. The service economy is trying to make a nation prosperous by doing each other's laundry for a fee. And it does increase tax revenue opportunities for the government, but it doesn't bring new wealth into the country, and that's really what is needed. Now, we have been talking about electric vehicles, the upside and the downside. We've been talking about how a lot of these autopilot systems are not as clever as we have been told they would be. And we've been looking at the problem that there isn't enough generation capacity in this country for a significant part of the population to drive electric vehicles. There simply isn't enough electricity to keep those batteries full at all times. We've been talking about what's going to happen with all that gasoline because you can't just turn it off at those refineries. When the raw petroleum goes into the bottom of the cracking towers, stuff comes out at different levels, and they find markets to sell that stuff to, and whatever they can't, they burn off at the top of the refinery. And one of those products that comes on out is gasoline. And they can't just stop that. It's still going to come on out. What are they going to do with it? You know, burn it off into the atmosphere? That kind of sort of negates the whole idea of the electric vehicle. But there's a new problem that is surfacing now, and it has to do with the fact that electric vehicles aren't buying gasoline, and therefore they are not paying gasoline taxes, and that means that funds for the construction and maintenance of the roads are starting to dry up. And last week, Washington Governor Jay Inslee basically vetoed a statewide ban on gas-powered car sales by 2030, fearing that all electric cars on the roads would mean no more money to keep those roads put together. It's another example of government putting out a policy without really thinking it all the way through. Okay. An ex-border protection official, Victor Manjares, in an interview with Sputnik News, says that Joe Biden's lax immigration policy in his first 100 days in office has caused a disaster on the southern border, and there does not appear to be any kind of a plan to deter the influx of migrants illegally crossing into the United States. Now, last month, CPB data revealed U.S. border apprehensions soared by more than 70% in March. But the president is saying, well, this is just seasonal, nothing to worry about. But no, as long as you hold out free goodies, they're going to come on and they're going to keep on coming. They really are. Getting into education here, there is this Manhattan school. It's a private school, $47,000 a year. It's the school Barron Trump used to attend, and they have now included a course on pornography at the junior level. And parents are understandably upset. Because this is a compulsory workshop on porn that included lessons on incest, role play, and OnlyFans. Now, I'm old-fashioned. I think schools should be about reading, writing, arithmetic, science, engineering, and things that allow us to build a technological society instead of all of this indoctrination. You know, we don't need to send kids to school to learn about porn. Trust me, they will discover it all on their own in good time. Down in Florida, there was this high school that triggered outrage because they photoshopped 80 female students' yearbook photos to make them look more conservative. They would bring up plunging necklines or anything that was revealing, and apparently the Photoshop work wasn't even that good. Parents got very, very angry, and now the Florida school is planning on refunding the outraged parents. So good for the parents on that one. I mean, the kids are the kids. And what's really interesting is the yearbook did not Photoshop any other photos of those same female students in their normal attire in the activity pages. It was just, in the photos of them as students, and they got in there and they tinkered around a little bit. Over at Notre Dame, they are canceling Biden. Normally, Notre Dame gives the incumbent U.S. president an honorary degree, but because of Biden's views on abortion, they have canceled the degree, and Biden is not going to show up at the commencement ceremony after all. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and this transgender thing has really torn at the soul of this country, and we're finally starting to see the states fight back on this issue. Tennessee is definitely in the forefront with what I would call common sense laws, although they're being denounced as anti-transgender. But Tennessee this year banned transgender athletes from playing in girls' public high school or middle school sports. They're going to require government buildings and businesses that are open to the public to post signs if they allow trans people to use multi-person bathrooms and other facilities associated with their gender identity. Public schools, meanwhile, will soon risk losing lawsuits if they let transgender students or employees use multi-person bathrooms or locker rooms that do not reflect their sex at birth. And Lee also signed legislation to require school districts to give parents 30 days notice before students are taught about sexual orientation or gender identity, and giving them the option to keep their kids out of such lessons. Like I said, old school reading, writing, arithmetic. All righty, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines primarily because we have people already calling on in. Area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Paul in New Jersey. Hello, Paul. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Michael, if it would be hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yeah, Michael, I'd like to talk about Bitcoin. And I hear a lot of people talking about that Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, and the reason for Bitcoin is because they have a problem, so-called, with Federal Reserve and other banks and their fiat currency.
Yes.
Now, to me, a fiat currency is, the word comes from fiat, or the whim or decree, and that the banks can just conjure up money out of nothing with no banking. Now, my problem with Bitcoiners is that, they, they claim to be against fiat currency, and what are they creating with Bitcoin? Another fiat currency. Bitcoin is creating money out of nothing. There's nothing backing it. And although they claim it's limited, that could actually be part of their scam, because they didn't, go through the diligence of trying to at least go through, getting a vault filled with gold. They took the shortcut.
Well,
now,
I think the attraction of Bitcoin for a lot of people is, first and foremost, it's decentralized. There is no central Federal Reserve style bank that is pulling the strings on all of it. And I think that's really the main reason people are looking not just to Bitcoin, but to all of these cryptocurrencies, is they basically want to have some kind of medium of exchange that governments and banks can't tinker with.
Yeah, can I hold?
Yes, you can. We'll be right back after station identification. And welcome back to the show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with Paul in New Jersey about fiat currencies and imaginary wealth. And if you really think about it, ultimately, all mediums of exchange are fluid. They're not solid. We have learned in recent years that diamonds are supposed to be so valuable. That value is imaginary because there are so many diamonds out there. Every married woman has one or two. There are shopping malls full of stores full of diamonds. So they're not really in short supply. We could be seeing the same thing happening with gold, trying to run the price of gold up. But there's enough gold where, pretty much everybody on Earth has a little bit, at least on their wedding ring. And as I said before, I think the attraction of virtual currencies is that they are not running through a central bank or a government. And so in a way, it's a form of economic rebellion.
It is, but it's not really a rebellion if the point is that you want to get rid of fiat currency and then just come up with electronic fiat currency. That's part of my problem with it. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you, I don't find it all that cutting edge. Anyway, listen, I used to go to Europe back in the 90s.
Yes.
And I remember going to a bank called Abin Amro, and I would use my Visa debit card, and I was able to withdraw and exchange American dollars for guilders and was charged 1%. It was done safely.
Yes.
There was never any problem.
Yeah.
And it was very efficient. And as we know, when you compare the amount of electricity used for Visa exchanges, remember, Visa does hundreds and thousands of exchanges a day.
Yes, they do.
All very efficiently. And yet Bitcoin really is an investment. Very few people purchase with it. They don't really buy
Yeah,
it.
you can't take Bitcoin down to the local shopping mall and buy stuff with it yet.
Yeah, it's not really the unit of exchange they claim it is. And it is an electricity hog. Now, listen, if they took all the resources they, in my opinion, waste on Bitcoin, from building the computers to wasting the electricity, and mine gold with that money and the resources, when you were done mining gold, right, you'd have a nice pile of gold right there, something that's
Yeah, but the
eternal,
difference
actually.
is anybody can set up a Bitcoin miner in their home and mine Bitcoins, but in order to mine gold, you have to have property rights. You have to own the property on which the gold mine sits, and most of those are pretty much spoken for.
Right, but here's the thing. Notice, and this is what I see fraudulent about Bitcoin too. Now, Bitcoin, whenever you see a picture of it on the internet, it's always a golden coin. So they're always trying to link it to gold. And even the term, notice the term, you're mining the Bitcoin.
Yes.
Are you really mining it? Or is it, or you are? To me, it's just a lot of mathematical jerk-offery. And it really...
Yeah, I think they're cracking keys somewhere along the line.
Yeah, so really, all the electricity and all the power for it, it's inefficient, right? There's nothing resulting as like, hey, there's an actual physical object with gold, right?
Yes.
And they don't even put on the pretense, at least the Federal Reserve claims they have gold in Fort Knox, right?
The Federal Reserve does not have gold in Fort Knox. We, the American people, supposedly have gold in Fort Knox that is managed by the Department of the Treasury. And the Federal Reserve, their only claim to having it is that the U.S. government owes them so much money.
Right, but at least what I'm saying is at least they put on the pretense that they do have a vault of gold. While all the cryptocurrencies, none of them claim to have any, vault full of gold.
Yeah, but the Federal Reserve note is not backed by gold. It doesn't matter how much gold the Federal Reserve has access to. It's not linked to that Federal Reserve note. All the Federal Reserve note is backed by is the future slave labor of the American people.
True, and there is a problem there. But remember, in the Constitution, it says, doesn't say print money, it says that the Congress will coin money. And that is basically saying our founders said the only valid coin of money is coins, and that would be precious metals and copper included in there.
Yes.
That would be for the small.
Very much so.
Amount. Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. I just think the whole cryptocurrency thing is a complete farce. Not that there's not problems with the Federal Reserve and the banking system now. There are problems with it. I don't deny that. But to claim you're an American or a patriot and rebelling against the man, and then just coming up with, like I said, non-existent, just digital phoniness on your cell phone, I don't see it as a real rebellion. To me, a real rebellion should be the people are starting to buy and accumulate gold, silver, even platinum and other precious noble metals, and basically bartering with those. And because that money has a decentralized value, remember, nothing is more decentralized, really. And I would argue gold is way more decentralized because when you have it in your hand, it's right there.
Yes, it is.
Even though you claim Bitcoin is decentralized, it's not in your computer, is it? No. It's someplace overseas or in China, mining away, right, that you have to have internet access to gain access to it. So I'm really just amazed that people are caught up in this mania, because it is a mania, in my opinion. It will turn out to be a bubble eventually, And I think it's I don't see it as a patriotic or a rebellious thing at all backing it.
Well, you're right. There's no actual foundation underneath any of the cryptocurrencies, and we have seen them bouncing all over the place. I know there are actual physical Bitcoin coins. I don't know that they actually are worth a Bitcoin or if it's just a symbol. I mean, if you really think about it, most of the dollars in circulation are also virtual. There's nothing backing them up either. They live in computers.
It's true. And I'm an old school guy that I like the thought, like the way it back was when they used to hand out silver certificates and those things. Remember seeing them
I remember those.
And I like the thought that anybody can go to the bank and basically exchange it for gold. But in a sense, instead of going to the bank, you just cash in your fiat garbage money with, precious metals salespeople. Yeah.
Okay.
And on that note, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Danny in Tennessee. Hello, Danny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, just some counter comments to what he was just saying about not the backbiting thing. It has record keeping, accounting, and record keeping. If that's of any value, then that's a part of the value of the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies and things of that type. And as far as use, well, you can't very well just take a chunk of gold and go down to some store these days and buy anything that way either. You got to go to some special place that will buy it and get it for whatever the store uses, and use that there then. And gold, you can't very well do it over the phone or over the internet. And so, the system is changing in a radical way. And parts of what I hear from places is they just got to destroy the old system to bring the new one in. And there are really big guys doing this. There's not much way that we could stop it. Plus, if we did stop it, would we retard our growth in the future? High technology and different things are coming. Another thing is to have more personal control of it and not have somebody else controlling us with it.
Okay. No, I'm old school as well. I'd rather have silver and gold in my possession, or a claim check thereof, which is the origin of the paper currency. The paper currency was not the money; it was merely a claim check for convenience. Hence, that little statement on the front that you could take that claim check to the bank and get $1 in actual silver for it.
Yes, but a lot with silver and gold is just people trust it, like anything else. It's what you have faith in.
Yes.
The U.S. currency today, full faith in credit. So it's having faith in the use of it.
Well, I think part of the problem is that the full faith and credit of the United States government isn't what it used to be.
Right. That's a big problem with it there. People have been abusing that. Okay, that was pretty much it. Just wanted a few counterpoints.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to switch to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. The idea of having solid currency or something of absolute value in our hands is certainly very, very comforting, because with the things that came out of Basel III with regard to the banking industry was very frightening. However, I'd like to give an example of why I worry about people having gold, if it really is gold in their possession. My brother Danny was living in Kingston, Jamaica. He had moved there in order to set up a computer business.
Yes.
And he was serving the island, and he didn't have much competition, so he very quickly made a lot of money. He also had a license, which was rare to be able to get one in Kingston at the time. He had a license for 3 firearms. He was lured by his friends, so-called friends, one of which was the assistant security manager at the Wyndham Rose Hall Hotel in Montego Bay.
Yes.
He was lured to the hills in Pinto outside of Kingston, where one of the men confessed that they had planned to brush him. He was apparently murdered. The keys and his apartment or his house was ransacked. They obviously took his keys. His safe was found open with all the gold and silver that he had collected gone.
Yes.
And of course, after the fact, who knows who did it? Whether it was some of the corrupt police or others. But a lot of his
Jamaica's very corrupt. There's no question about that. Well, generally, the advice for anybody who is collecting silver and gold is to keep it in multiple safe places and not to tell anybody that you've got it. Same thing for preppers. Don't tell your neighbors that you've got all this stored food and water. That makes you a target during the next emergency.
Food and water, yes, that's also a risk. But there are other issues with gold and silver. I remember when I was going to university, I couldn't get loans because Quebec would not help me out as a student. Ontario said I was not yet, because I had left Quebec. Ontario would not help me. And so I just sold whatever jewelry that I had. And so I went to Burke's Jewelers, and I found that they had to scrape it in order to discover what was actually true gold, whether it was 22 karat or 10 karat, or whether it was only gold-plated.
Yes.
A lot of the things that I thought was actually gold was only gold-plated. The problem is that we as ordinary people don't have the ability to distinguish the value of a piece of gold, whether it's 10, 14, 22 karat, or whether it's just gold-plated or something that shines. All that shines is not gold. But the question is, the problem was in Jamaica, what he had was, he was single, he was only 29, and so he had servants in the house who obviously could spy on him.
Yes.
I don't think he went around bragging to people, I've got a gold collection. And the problem was, at the time, my mother was with me in Bethlehem for the series I was doing for the TV station. Normally, she would go there and take back whatever he had collected and put it in a safe place when she went back to Canada. I shouldn't be saying this, but at the time in Jamaica, they had no taxes for residents. And he resented the high taxes in Canada. Now, people I thought, rather cruelly joked, well, he doesn't have to worry about taxes now that he's dead. But the problem is, why do we have to find something, and a form of value that we can store, when we know if in times of crisis it may actually create or make us a target? And I've said this before, and I'll repeat it again. I have another brother who also collected gold and silver, and he was able to do it in a way that was it wasn't actually in coins, in the form of coins, or anything that was easy to identify. But I just don't think that gold and silver for the average ordinary person is necessarily the answer. I don't know. Are we going to have to go, if we want to avoid things like taxes, if we want to be able to trade with one another, maybe we have to start once again going back to the primitive system of bartering. We have to ask ourselves,
there's a lot of that going on right now, and one of the reasons why people are storing up on what's called the junk silver, the pre-1964 coins, is that they're a recognizable measure of the metal content inside. As far as your gold jewelry, I don't know what jeweler you went to who had to scrape your jewelry, but it's almost like Archimedes lived in vain, because with a simple densitometer test, you can pretty much find out what the gold content of a piece of jewelry actually is.
Well, this was when I was in university, which would have been, 50 years ago?
Well, Archimedes lived a little bit before that.
Well, I don't know what Archimedes, what system he used, but every jeweler that I ever went to did the same thing.
Okay.
I don't know what system they were using. And Birks, B-I-R-K-S, was the biggest and most reputable jeweler in Canada.
Okay.
They were, whatever system they used, and at that time, of course, gold was only $35 an ounce. I can only imagine what it might be worth today. But I have to say that I was relieved when I got rid of it, because when I had it, I had to have insurance. And that in itself was very expensive, or I had to keep it in security boxes, which also was very expensive. So quite frankly, I think the way that people, once again, back to bartering, it's a way to get around paying exorbitant taxes. It's a way, if the system collapses, we're able to acquire things that we need in exchange for things that other people might need. So we all have to come up with creative ways. What am I capable of producing? What can I do that someone else might need? I'm no expert. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I'm just trying to caution people on the fact that there are ways that other people can know what you have, even if you try to keep it secretive.
Yep.
And keeping something that is, even a little thing. When I had a horse that people wanted to ride, I felt like I told a friend, I felt like I'm leading him through a forest where the crocodiles are snapping at him. It's like there's always someone who covets or wants what you've got. So the best thing
that, unfortunately, is human nature. Now, before I let you go, because we're coming up here on a commercial break, I just did a really quick search, and over on Amazon, They have a little gizmo. It costs $105, and it's called the ET18 Gold Tester, where it will test the carat weight of gold that's inside its little test receptacle there. It can even detect platinum, and it's a non-destructive test. So,
If it's
yeah.
reliable, that's great.
Yeah, well, that certainly is going to make your concerns about gold, a little bit obsolete in this modern day and age.
Yes, except that it helps in terms of determining the value and of a particular piece of metal, but it does still leave us open to the liability of theft and break-ins in order to get to it.
Well, then you got to be clever about that kind of stuff, and if you're rich enough to have servants and whatever, then you're rich enough to have a safe to which the servants don't have the combination.
He did have a safe, and in order to get his keys, they killed him.
Well, there's always that here, but again, if you're going to have that kind of wealth, it's best to keep it hidden. That's why so many people who win the lottery do so anonymously, because they don't want to be instant targets.
In some places, it can be anonymous. I believe in Canada, you have to be, they like to use you as a propaganda tool. It's so bizarre when the government is encouraging gambling. Go buy the lottery, have your dreams come true. It's so crazy. But anyway, there are just a lot of, and I don't even know, is there really that much gold still circulating, or has it all, the most valued gold, been stored away by the wealthy?
Well, we're not sure how much gold is still down there in the deep earth. Anyway, Layla, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Got other callers on the line. 512-248-8252. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. And again, a quick reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network needs you, and more importantly, your continuing support, so that we can go on keeping the American people fully informed so that they can make good choices. Once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 3. Belch. Number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. Now, if you mail in a donation of $100, you will get your choice of an RBN coffee mug or an RBN t-shirt. So include your t-shirt size and a return address. If you send in $115 or more, you will get both items. And don't forget the Front Sight Firearms deal. That's still going on as well. Our phone lines are open. Area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Don in Arizona. Hello, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, as far as any kind of wealth you have, somebody might beat you up, kill you.
Well, look how many Bitcoin exchanges got hacked into, and all that money disappeared.
Right, it can disappear. Mt. Gox was the first big exchange. It went totally. Somebody stole all the money. Yeah, a lot of stuff gets stolen. Bitcoin can get stolen. And another thing that can happen, if people know you have Bitcoin, which sometimes it's pretty obvious that somebody's a Bitcoin. There's a lot of Bitcoin millionaires running around. They could just torture you and say, okay, give me the key, give me, they could kidnap you and say, okay, I'm going to, torture you in various ways, make you feel a lot of pain unless you give me, wire about half of your Bitcoin money to a different account. I mean, I'm sure that does happen.
Yeah, I imagine it does too. I mean, kidnapping is a real problem with Bitcoin, with bank accounts, and again, unless you want to spend a huge amount of money on security, and that, at least in part, gets back to the Front Sight Firearms training program. It's best, just to keep that kind of thing hidden and have the attitude It's nobody's business what, if any, wealth you have stashed away.
Another way to invest in gold that some of the listeners might not know, a pretty good way that's clean where you don't actually take possession. You can buy gold mining stocks. And since most of us are not experts on that, you can just buy a good a mutual fund of gold mining stocks, which there are many that compete with each other. And if the price of gold does go up, I mean, they do own gold, so you're kind of buying gold that way because they have gold. It's just in the ground. Hasn't been mined yet. So and silver, you can do the same thing with silver and stuff. So that's one way that I found that's like a bank account. You can get that money right away if you need it, and it's not. There's no way that somebody's going to kill you and take your stocks out. I mean, it's possible somehow. I guess I don't know. I don't think so. So, but that's about all I wanted to say. Is in Bitcoin, I agree with that first guy. That Bitcoin, you're right. There's nothing there, but as long as people believe in it, it's not backed by anything.
Well, that's what props up the Federal Reserve note is people's belief that somehow it represents money when it actually represents debt.
What they said when they did away with gold, they said it's not backed by gold anymore. It's backed by plutonium because the Americans at that time had most of the nuclear weapons and stuff.
Yes, well, they still do.
Yeah, but I don't know what the hell to say. And there's no complete safe way to live your life. But
no, there isn't.
Bitcoin is. I got tired of the volatility. I made some money on this last run up, and I quit while I'm ahead. I'm saying I just don't like to go up. It might go up 10,000. It might go up 50% in a month, or it might go down 50% in 2 days or something.
Yeah,
I've had enough of that kind of stuff. I'm too old to be worried about that kind of stuff. I'll let you go, Mike. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Well, one of the questions I always had is whether that physical Bitcoin actually has any value or if it's just, a fancy paperweight. We have open phone lines, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Rick in Arizona. Hello, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How am I coming in, Mike?
You're a little fuzzy, but...
Okay. I noticed that the street protesters, the Israeli street supporters in California, they're not wearing masks.
Okay.
Then you get somewhere else. Then you got the Palestinian supporters. They're all wearing masks. I think there's some very sinister and very crafty operations going here. I mean, with the mask. It's kind of peculiar how all the free people are on the support of the Israelis, and all the people that support the Palestinians are bogged down wearing masks.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the Israelis know something the rest of us don't. Anyway, Rick, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We've got callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And welcome back to our show here. We have open phone lines right now, area code 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Bruce, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, you're on the air. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm going to be very quick here. On that person that was on the airplane that was redirected to Belarus and all the outcry over it. In 2013, France, Spain, Portugal, and Italy all worked to force the plane of then Bolivian President Evo Morales to land because they thought Edward Snowden was on it. You remember that?
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, these people are total hypocrites. Total hypocrites. And this guy, let's see, Prosintovich, he's an operative for the State Department, for the CIA. He's a homosexual rights activist. He's basically an operative to destabilize Belarus. So I don't know if they were justified in doing it or not, but it's a case of the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
It amazes, it amazes me the hubris, the outright ability to lie about everything from the election to the January 6th incident at the Capitol, and to the Palestinian uprising being brokered by, ceasefire being brokered by Biden, which is baloney. The whole government has lost its morality. Without that, we don't have to go involved because they won't follow the law, and they won't. It's just a really pathetic.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, most governments tend to not really have much morality beyond what they can get for themselves.
Right, yeah. I just want to mention Jim Fetzer case has been approved to be appealed to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And so maybe we need to keep that on the radar and maybe try to support him as that goes forward.
Well, can you give us a quick overview of what the case is about?
Yeah, it has to do with Sandy Hook and the birth certificate of the kid Posner, that Lenny Posner and the ADL, et cetera, have sued him for disclosing the birth certificate that he actually was given by a third party that had gross errors in it and unsigned lines and no stamp, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And summary judgment was issued by the judge without a trial in favor of the plaintiff, and so he owes $250,000 at this point for daring to be a journalist, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll send you something in the email.
All right, I appreciate that.
Or information on. Thank you. Okay, that's all I got.
All right, thanks a lot. We have phone lines open, 512-248-8252, and we're going to go to Joe in Nome. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Martian fungus.
Ah, okay.
It occurs to me that obviously there's seasons on Mars, just like there's seasons on Earth.
Yes, there are.
Any kind of life forms would adapt to the seasons. And it occurs to me that this would explain transient Martian phenomena, i.e. the canals that seem to come and go. Now,
well, they don't call them canals anymore. I mean, it's pretty much understood that, what Schiaparelli was looking at through his telescope was the Valley Marinaris, which is this gigantic network of canyons across the middle of Mars. But because of atmospheric turbulence, it never came in clear, and all he got was that strong sense of lines.
Oh, no, I've seen pictures that where they bifurcate all over the place. But anyway, relating that to the Earth, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I have learned, the biggest organism on Earth is these giant single-cell mycelium, what are they, truffles? Yeah. Those organisms are single organism, single neural network that spans, multiple square miles.
I think I know what you're talking about. They operate as a single organism, but they are mass colonial. They have individual cells that function not quite autonomously, but it's a colonial animal. But you're right; they can be very, very huge.
I have heard other people on the Martian orbital telemetry pictures, that describe in terms of what looked like trees, banyan trees was what someone had compared them to.
Well, but, I spent a lot of time looking at the surface of Mars through the Viking 1 and Viking 2 landers, and I never saw anything that looked like a tree.
Well, I'm not talking about a lander. I'm talking about orbital telemetry. But at any rate, you know how they say if there's a nuclear war, the cockroaches will take over the world. But I got to disagree with there. It's the.
I mean, they've already taken over Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I like that cartoon somebody said with the rats saying, no, I ain't taking the jab. It hasn't been tested on humans yet. But anyway, as far as the cockroaches go, well, I think it probably wiped out the cockroaches too if we had a bang-up nuclear war. And the only thing that would survive would be the fungus, because I'm aware that they can feed on radiation.
Yeah, they actually did find some species of small fungus at the Trinity site, which had evolved to not only tolerate and survive the residual radiation, but actually seemed to be utilizing it as an energy source.
Yeah, and Paul Stamets actually had he gave a TED Talk, and he talked about, he had a Department of Defense contract to cultivate mushrooms for toxic waste, remediation.
Yes.
Specifically, what he mentioned was hydrocarbons, like fuel contamination.
Yes.
But it seemed like he didn't really go into it too much about the radiation remediation. But
well, they do use ground plants to clean up radiation spills. It's called bioaccumulation, and that was certainly one of the things they did both at Chernobyl and Fukushima.
Well, then what do they do with the plants? Then they burn them or something?
No, they have to basically be treated as radioactive waste, but it's a lot more efficient letting the plants suck the radiation out of the soil and dealing with the plants than trying to process the soil and extract the radioisotopes yourself.
Yeah. Well, have you heard that they found giant petrified mushrooms, like 2 foot in diameter and 15 foot tall?
I think you're talking about the stromatolites.
I'm talking about a mushroom with a stalk 2 foot wide.
Okay.
And 15 foot tall, petrified. As far as I know, fungus was the first terrestrial organism to evolve on Earth.
Could very well be the case. We know that life started in the deep ocean, probably around the thermal vents, and spread out from there. But there's a lot of very interesting variations on life in that fossil record. And, a lot of them started out as these very gigantic colonial animals.
Well, it occurs to me that possibly these myceliums might be intelligent. But
that would be a bit of a stretch. Otherwise, they'd be building the space shuttles and flying into space.
Well, they might be what's causing the crop circles, but at any rate,
the crop circles tend to be a hoax. Anyway, listen, Joe, I've let you go on long enough here, and we're going to go to another phone call now. Thank you. Mitchell in Memphis. Hello, Mitchell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
My God, Mike Rivero, what's going on, man?
Well, you tell me.
Well, I'll give it a shot. Listen, I'm going to be mean.
Okay.
I'm gonna read something here. Karen is a, what's that word, Mike? Pejorative?
It is now.
Karen is a pejorative term for a woman seeming to be entitled and demanding beyond the scope of what is normal.
Yes.
As here, the term also refers to memes depicting white women who use their privilege to demand their own way. Should we rename Layla Karen?
I don't think so. Let's be nice and gentle to Layla. She's just starting out at RBN, and we have to be kind.
All right, don't ring that bell. Look, she always wants to advise everyone. I just heard her on the phone. She was advising everyone again, about the downsides to possessing gold. Correct?
She was, something which I obviously do not agree with her on.
Well, if you notice, she really didn't give us any solution for any other way for one to store their wealth.
No, she did not.
There's really no solution, and I notice that a lot. There's really no solution. She just tells us we must do this, but there's really no look. And it also is interesting. It seems like damn near everybody in her family seemed to have so much gold they got in trouble with it. But anyway,
well,
look,
must be nice coming from family money.
It seems like there's a lot of money. I'm here in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't.
I sometimes I daydream about what it would be what it would be like to actually have significant money, but it's never happened in my life.
You daydream about it, and then you have nightmares about not having money.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So look, cash. I would venture to guess. I haven't researched this, but I would venture to say that cash is stolen more than gold.
I would say you're probably right about that. Cash is easier to pass than gold. And, especially if it's small bills where nobody's keeping a record of those serial numbers.
Well, here in Memphis, Tennessee, I would bet you that cash is probably stolen at gunpoint seemingly every night.
Yes.
I go jogging and I hear gunshots. So something's happening.
Wow, that's, yeah.
A lot of, look, she mentioned a barter system. You must have something. You have to have something of value to trade. That can be
ammo.
Stolen. Yeah, anything can be stolen. So really, what it comes down to is individuals have to be able to protect themselves and
I agree. That's why I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment.
Yeah. So you may not like this, Layla, but lo and behold, good Lord, it may come down to the use of force. And I'll close on this, Mike. I want to ask Layla. I'll try it again. Layla, in a nation with a government that is not legitimate, and seemingly there are no proper channels by which we can attempt to affect change for we the people, what do you choose? Last Friday I rattled off 4 of your options. So if there are no proper channels, Layla, you only have 3 other choices. You can run away to another country or commit suicide, escapism. You can use force, physical resistance, or you can acquiesce or submit. Or, Layla, you could give us a solution to this problem. We need solutions.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And, I don't like the idea of violence, but it seems like, we're about to prove John Kennedy was right when he said that when peaceful revolution becomes impossible, violent revolution becomes inevitable. We're seeing that in so many other countries around the world. In fact, I'm just getting a headline now. There may be a coup d'etat taking place in Mali.
Wow. Well, Mike, I don't think the average person, I don't think they wake up in the morning and say, you know something, honey, I want to go and engage in some violence.
No, that doesn't really happen, and usually people engage in violence only when they're driven to it. And
I think most people want to do things through the proper channels, and they seemingly don't exist. So, Layla, I'm being serious. If you have solutions for what we can do so that we don't have to engage it, but we're not hearing any solutions. At any rate, Mike, I picked on Layla enough. I wish she'd answer my questions. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you. Well, actually, Layla just called back in. So, Layla, let's start with you and take you through the commercial break. You wanted to respond to Mitchell.
If there are no... okay. Mitchell is the one who's called before and tried to criticize me for one reason or another. First of all, my family did not have wealth. We became poverty-stricken when we left Palestine. Whatever we had, we earned. And my brother worked really hard to earn things. This was the beginning of the computer age. And he, as a 13-year-old, learned how to build computers on his own, and then went to a place where he could, where that was underserved with regard to computer manufacturers.
Yes.
But I'm not proposing to dictate to people what they should or should not do. What I am suggesting is that people have to, about the risks of actually having wealth. And I have to say that I don't have a lot of things of value anymore. And I'm very happy not to have it. There's something about accumulating more than you need. I have what I need.
Yeah, your possessions come to possess you. You know, and, I've learned that at my age. I stopped trying to acquire things, and I'm looking to give them all away so they don't wind up in a landfill when I die.
Yeah, well, the other thing, too, is the liability of having things.
True.
And
Layla, I got to put you on hold. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program today. We're talking with Layla in Canada, and we're talking about wealth and possessions. And, there is that class of people for whom money is a real addiction, and no matter how much they have, they've got to have more. That's our billionaire class, the George Soroses, the Bill Gates of the world. And then you have other people who just want to be comfortable. And once they're comfortable, they really don't have that strong need to acquire anymore. And I think there's a certain wisdom there.
Yeah, I think greed and the desire to possess is a voracious thing. There's never quite enough.
Yeah.
But Mitchell, that just blows my mind is he's always misquoting me. I remember he's the one who called up once and said that I once said, well, now we have to watch Biden. Well, he said, so what? Just sit there and watch Biden, then what? He totally omitted the context in which I said that. I said we have to watch Biden for the right time to make inroads. It's not like me to simply make a cryptic statement without, well, as you know, I don't just make a cryptic statement. I'm usually far more verbose than simply.
Yes, you are. And, Layla, I gave you a chance to respond here, but we're almost at the end of the show, and I want to try and get at least one more call in here before the end of the program. So let's go to Stacy in Florida. Hello, Stacy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to say briefly that we want to give Chance another chance to call in. He's so great. Last night, Lola didn't like what Layla didn't appreciate what Chance says, but he offers so much to Republic Broadcasting as well as all of the great people that call in, Mike. So we hope that Layla will take his call another time on her show. And I know he always calls your show, of course, and other shows.
Yes, he does.
Okay, give Chance another chance. Thanks.
All right, thanks. We're going to go to James in Vancouver. Hello, James. Real quick, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I can offer a solution for those patriots that want to fight. Just take the motto of the SAS, who dares wins. Okay?
Yes.
Who dares wins. You dare to do it, you win. You don't dare to do it, don't go blaming anybody else. You want to get rid of the CIA, it can do it in 24 hours. It's just a question of doing it.
Yeah, well, that applies to, rising up against any tyranny. And it does seem to be happening more and more often around the world. And I think I said a while back that this push to create a global government could actually create the political climate leading to global revolution. And that may actually be happening.
Well, you never know. But anyway, thanks for taking my call, and all the best to everybody. Have a good day.
All right, have a good day. Thank you very much. We are pretty much at the end of the program, so stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It is very urgent at this time. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.